Welcome back, everybody. Part two of my introduction to pointer lectures. Let's continue with what we were talking about. So if you haven't already, check out my first video on this, or else you're going to be a little bit lost in terms of the pointer concepts. Okay, so we have this program. Okay, now we also have the ability to actually access the 25 from pointer, because then what else would a pointer be? You don't just only want to point to an address. You want to actually be able to access certain variables that are integers, right? So not only do you want to print out maybe or access the address, you also want to be able to print out the value of what it's pointing at. So in this case, because we have the address x07b, which belongs to x, right? So it's a reference. What if I wanted to print out the value of that address, right? What if I wanted to do that? Well, it's very easy. That's where the indirection operator comes in. Okay, so what we could do, and let me show you a program here, is we can say we're going to print out the value of x. That's something that you should know. And then here we use the indirection operator using the indirection operator with the variable name, and that's actually going to print out the value 25, right? And then we'll just print out the address using PTR. So whenever you use the indirection operator, what that actually means is that you're printing out what is the contents of the address that it's pointing to. So in this case, what is the contents of x07b? The contents of x07b is 25, right? So if we go back here and I run that, the contents of it is 25, and we can use that with the indirection operator. Okay, and as you see, the address of x stays the same, okay, because it is the pointer. So essentially what we're doing is we have one variable and we can have another variable reference that same variable. Reference meaning that it's not a copy. So what does that mean? It actually means that we can change the value in PTR, and if we change the value of PTR, then X will also change. Okay, so let's look at an example of that. Now, I'm gonna comment this out. Okay, oh, it comments it out for us. Okay. So we're going to say the indirection operator is equal to 100 because that's the only way we can access for reading and writing the value. Which means that what I'm doing here is I am actually modifying whatever is in the contents of x07b. So what I'm doing is I'm doing that and I'm doing that. Right? So I'm modifying it via PTR. So PTR is sort of a proxy, right? Because I'm pointing to it. I'm pointing to X. How did I point to X? I did this, right? Right here. Okay? I'm pointing to the address. So once I do that, now I have the ability to modify whatever is in X in terms of the contents. And I do that by doing this, right? And by doing that, now if I print out X, let's say, let's see value in X again. Let's see what the magic, this is where the magic happens, right? So initially we have 25, right? We also have the indirection operator by line 11. We're trying to print out 25, right? We use the indirection operator pointer and assign it the value of 100, which is basically what we did over here. We just cross this out, right? Because now I'm pointing to X, right? And then we modify it with 100. What that's going to do is, because I am holding the contents of X, it's going to change X. And when I print it out again, let's see the value x again, we have 100, right? So x is now 100. Okay? So what you're seeing here is that we're pretty much using a little bit of something called a proxy. Okay? Where you have a pointer that holds the address, and it's also pointing to the value of whatever variable you're pointing to. Okay? And by doing that, that gives me the ability to use my pointer proxy, my pointer variable, to modify the contents of x, okay, via the pointer variable. Okay, so you can think of it, a pointer, as a middleman. Okay, it's kind of like a middleman or middlewoman. Okay, so let's have a little bit of more fun here with pointers. Let's write another program, okay, where I'm going to modify a couple of variables here. Okay, so let me write it out. All right, so here is a very, very cool program that gives us the power of pointers. Okay, so I've initialized 3 variables. So think of this in terms of visually. You have 3 boxes that you've assigned a value to. So x, y, z, you have these values, and then also keep in mind that they also have different addresses in memory. Okay, now we have one pointer, which is an integer. Okay, so this is a pointer variable to an integer. Right now it's not pointing to anything, but we will make it point to something soon. On lines 9 and 10, I'm just going to print out the current values. So x, y, and z. Okay, and then this is where the fun begins. I'm going to use pointer to point to the address of x. By doing that, now I am working as a proxy for x. By working as a proxy, by using the indirection operator, I can access the value and then multiply that value by 2. So I can multiply 25 times 2. It's going to give me 50, and assign it to the value of wherever that address is located, which means I'm changing x, right? I'm doing the same thing with y, and I'm doing the same thing with z. At the same time, on line 17, I'm actually reassigning pointer to point to the address of y. And I can do that. I can use a pointer and have it point to different integer variables, addresses at least. And once I do that, I can modify the contents of y, modify the contents z, and then once again, you'll see that the values have changed. So let's run this real quick, and then I can break it down further for you. Okay? So here are the values of x, y, and z. Initially, they start as 27, 50, and 75. And then with the pointer variable as my proxy, I'm able to modify x, y, and z. And you see that when I print out the x, y, z variables, they've already changed. So what the heck is going on, okay, with these pointers? So let's take a look, and then I can break it down for you. Let's take this, and we can go down here. Okay. Now, I'm going to do it line by line. Okay, so you're with me. So let's go over this line here. So 1 is actually creating 3 memory locations, right? We call it x, y, and z. All right, so we have the value 25, 50, and 75. All right, I think we're good so far. Now, we're declaring a pointer variable in number 2. So number 2, we have a little box here, and we have PTR, pointer. Right? Pointer has its own address, and we are not concerned about that. We just want to make sure that it can point to these things, right? 3 here, we're just printing out the values. So that's all we're doing here. We're just printing them out to console. Okay? Not going to bother with that. That's something you should already know. I'm just going to go over as to the logic of what's happening whenever we have the pointer assignments. 4 is pointer is going to point to the address of x, right? So let's do x, y, and z. And let's say this is 0, 1a, 0, 1b, and let's say that's 0, 1c. Those are the addresses of x and y, x, y, and z. Okay? Which means that the pointer address is now going to be 0, 1a, right? That is what we're pointing at. So we're pointing at that, right? The indirection is saying that, so let's break this down a bit, okay? So the indirection is basically saying the contents of address 0, 1a, okay? So 0, 1a is going to be 25. And I want you to multiply that by 2. So when we do the indirection operator, we're taking the contents, which is 25, is this, right? And we're storing that into the contents of pointer. So what we're basically doing is now we're taking that, crossing it out, and we're making that 100. Okay? So this is 5. Now, 6 is we're now going to repoint over here for 6. Okay? And then we're going to take this, and the contents of pointer is going to be 0, 1b. Okay? Which means 7 here, we're taking the same concept, the indirection. Now we have 0, 1b is 50, right? Multiply that by 2, right? And store it in whatever address we're at, which is 0, 1b. What's 0, 1b? It's that. So now this is going to be, I'm sorry, this should be 50, not 100. This is going to be 100. Okay? And then we do the same thing with z. So if we look at the program that we wrote, we have 50, 100, and 50. Notice how I did not print out the indirection pointer because, again, we're only pointing to one thing at a time. We're going to print out x, y, and z, which is what we're doing down here, right? Over here. Because through the pointer variable, we were able to modify x, y, and z. So eventually this becomes 150. Right? We were able to modify x, y, and z. So again, think of the pointer as a little bit of a proxy, and it's got two things, right? It's got the address of where it's pointing to, and then the value of that address, which in our case was the value of x, y, and z as we started pointing to it. Okay? So I hope this clarified a little bit of things about pointers. It's not that bad, really. It's not too bad. It can get really complex if you're pointing to another pointer variable. That can get really messy. And it does happen. It does happen. But you need to understand the basic fundamentals of when a pointer variable points to just a simple variable. We start there. And then we can start looking at pointing to a pointer that points to another pointer. That can get, again, complex. Okay? So on the next video, we're going to talk about arrays and pointers. That's going to be fun. Okay? So stay tuned.